Hello again everyone, and welcome to my next video. This will be Rabbi Gestetner's introduction to the second Collive video, False Rabbis. The subject, as in the first Collive video, revolves around the fake Gett abuse accusation against Jewish men. The first series featured Y.Y. Jacobson and Avi Kahan, and you can find a link below in the description box to part 1 of that series. For this new series, Avi Kahan, the usual suspect, makes his second appearance. However, it seems that Jacobson himself refused to go along with these meetings anymore, so instead Kahan had to search the world in order to find a respectable-looking rabbi, seemingly from the old generation, to make his lies seem more believable. And so he presents to us the person of Yosef Feigelstock from faraway Buenos Aires. However, our rabbis already stated in Avos Perek 4, Mishnah 20, Al tistaka b'kankan el b'mashiyesh boy. In other words, don't judge a book by its cover. As before, they both continue to profess a twisted version of halacha, such as that which emanates of the reform-minded Israeli rabbinate. However, this time they try to be more careful with their words because they realize that people like us are monitoring everything they say. In the meantime, though, I want you to summarize for you what I see happening today in the world of Jewish divorce. We are living in a world that has gone off the deep end. We are constantly being bombarded with lies and distortions as to what constitutes the correct social and moral norms we ought to be living by. The traditional family unit has come under attack from people who dabble in new and radical ideologies. Instead of marriage being looked upon as a bedrock of society, it is seen as a tool of what is known as the patriarchy, the supposed unfair system of male control. Religious beliefs are portrayed as being quaint and archaic, while new innovations, such as same-sex marriage, are being declared the new normal. And many of these developments have not been limited to secular society only, because sadly they have infiltrated the insular community of our very own Orthodox Judaism. That group was supposed to have been comprised of people who are adherent to both the written and oral Torahs. Through its lessons and teachings, we as a people throughout the millennia have derived our knowledge of what is the Torah truth and what is expected from us by Hashem in order to be considered devout and upstanding Jews. And we have done so with the help and guidance of our great sages who have already unlocked for us the meaning of the commandments in the Torah. For example, the fundamentals of all the essential mitzvahs have been elucidated for us by Rav Yosef Karo, known as the Mechaber, in his magnum opus, the Shulchan Aruch, which means a set table. Everything on the table has already been prepared for us to understand the halacha or Jewish law. All the research has already been done for us, so all we need to do now is learn this vast book of knowledge and follow what it says. Take, for example, the prohibition of eating pork. Any Orthodox Jew knows that in order for an animal to be considered kosher, the Torah dictates that it must have two distinct anatomical attributes. That is, it has split hooves and that it is able to chew its cud. And we know, of course, both from the Torah itself and also empirically, that while a pig does indeed have split hooves, it nevertheless does not chew its cud. Now suppose for a moment that some rabbi were to come along and announce that he has come to the conclusion that an animal having the attribute of split hooves only is enough for it to be declared kosher, and therefore the pig is now permitted to eat. Would anyone listen to him? To put it mildly, I think not. It is the same thing when it comes to the laws of divorce. It is a fundamental precept in the Torah that when a man wants to divorce his wife, he writes her a document known as a Gett and hands it to her, and they are divorced. Although much ink has been spilled on this subject, the long and short of it is this. A Gett is unilateral, that is to say, it can only be granted from a man to a woman, and not vice versa. And furthermore, it must be given voluntarily, without any external pressure. The instance where a coerced Gett is considered kosher is so rare that for all intents and purposes it does not exist. If you ask a learned Orthodox rabbi about this, someone who is not tainted by modernity and feminism, he will quickly acknowledge these facts. But alas, It is very rare today to come across a bezin of God-fearing, ethical, and experienced dayanim who have a track record of following the halacha carefully and who cannot be bribed. Instead of a bezdin, we have today what I call bias dins. These are nothing more than businesses that have everything to gain if they can produce a coerced get for every woman who seeks an end to her marriage. They would even declare a pig to be kosher if the mob in the street would only scream loud enough. But instead of demanding the right to eat pork, the rabble is agitating for any married woman today to receive a get on demand. This has led to a plague of forced gittin being issued on a massive scale. And it doesn't take much for a get to fall into the above category of being coerced. Do not be fooled into thinking that coercion refers to physical violence only, the kind that was administered by the proud father, Mendel Epstein. No. All it takes for it to be considered coercion is the mere threat to embarrass the husband in a public setting, whether that be in real life or on social media. And the rabbis that overtly or covertly support the organizations that humiliate and embarrass men in order to procure a get are in essence sanctioning this illegal coercion. It is the tacit support of these charlatan rabbis which is directly to blame for the massive get coercion being carried out today, which is raining destruction down upon our communities. Besides for the massive sins of Eshes Ish on a wholesale level, it is also destroying the ancient pedigree of our people through the intermarriage between mamzerim and non-mamzerim, which is not much different than regular intermarriage in its harmful after effects. In many of my previous videos, I have linked in a description box numerous letters of rabbis from previous generations who had halachic integrity, warning us about the impending doom that these fake rabbis have in store for us. I will say it again. An unkosher get achieved through coercion is a document that becomes a stumbling block for the affected woman unless she uses it as a very expensive piece of toilet paper. Because if she uses it to get remarried, she would be committing adultery in the eyes of Hashem. And any child born as a result of such a get is considered a mamzer or bastard who can never marry a regular Jew, only another bastard. And this blemish remains in the child's descendants till the end of time. In my own divorce case, I have done everything the correct way, and Lonna Ralbag Kin, my ex-wife, has done everything against the Torah. And yet, people still label me as an abuser, and fake rabbis issue illegitimate siruvim against me. You have surely heard about the recent concept known as cancel culture. It refers to the woke mob on the left erasing pillars of Western society such as Christopher Columbus and George Washington from our collective memory, as well as anyone else perceived to be representing anything offensive. Well, this cancel culture is alive and well right here in our own Orthodox Judaism. We have seen Torah concepts and halachic rulings which are deemed to be offensive being ignored or sidelined, and esteemed halachists such as Rabbi Gestetner have been protested by the mob. If this type of lunatic behavior continues, with every second husband being rendered a potential get refuser without careful analysis of the facts, I suspect that future shidduchim will get much harder. That is because very few men would want to invest in a marriage that, while bringing children into the world, also causes him to be stripped of all his halachic rights, along with all of his possessions too. You have surely heard the Aguna mobs hurling invective against people like me, calling us get refusers, abusers, and other nice things like that. But notice that they will never do any introspection and look at their own anti-Torah behavior. From start to finish, the entire process of their divorce proceeding is one of non-stop bully tactics and abuse. It is no wonder that their illegal actions result in no get, or in some cases an invalid one. Some examples of these actions are: number 1, litigating in secular court instead of going to a bezdin to arbitrate the entire divorce. Number 2, ejecting the husband from the marital home. Number 3, obtaining an order of protection against the husband through false claims of abuse. Number 4, kidnapping of the children and refusing to let them see their father. And 5, robbing the husband of his assets through the use of the secular court. And the list goes on and on. If this is not abuse, can you tell me what is? In fact, it is serious abuse, moral, ethical, and halachic abuse. And yet they have the audacity to label us as the abusers. On the contrary, a woman who violates the Torah in matters of divorce is called a moredes, a rebellious woman. Someone with that status forfeits the right to receive a get till the end of time, or at least till they rectify what they have done wrong. And it is much better for them to rectify the wrongdoings in this world than to face Hashem in the next world for all the sins they have committed throughout their divorce proceedings. One of the reasons I have gone public with my story is to bring awareness to the existence of these rebellious women, along with the rabbinic corruption that empowers them. In my first video called Lonna Ralbag Kin, the fake and phony aguna, I provided hard evidence in the description box below the video, backing up all my claims. You see, rather than being the poster child of the aguna movement, Lonna instead personifies the fake aguna. Nothing that I ever could have done rendered her an aguna. To the contrary, she has done everything to herself, including acquiring for herself the title moredes. She had an acrimonious divorce with her previous husband, who was not allowed to visit with his daughters all throughout our 4 years of marriage. Then after I discovered nefarious and immoral computer activity, which understandably could have seriously endangered the spiritual well-being of my son and her daughters, she decided to file for divorce against me. I actually consented reluctantly to this divorce because by that time I had already learned enough about her questionable behavior that I wanted and needed to stay away. I only asked that she come to a bezdin and do a peaceful divorce, the kind I had done in my own previous marriage. Lonna and I had only one son in common and no assets to fight over. She was even offered a total of 4 bezdins, but she refused them all. The first one was a widely acceptable bezdin in Monsey led by Rabbi Moshe Gabioff. Lonna had a judge place a gag order on me to prevent me from telling the bezdin what she was doing with those computers. By preventing my free speech, Lonna was doing everything she could to prevent the Torah authorities from discovering her true nature and pernicious activities that were so detrimental to the children. After informing Rabbi Gabioff about the gag order, she had a judge threaten me with jail time unless I agreed to give up the custody claim regarding my son. As a result of all of this, Rabbi Gabioff placed a seruv on her. But because of what I found out about the computers, Lonna dismissed her New York divorce petition in order to prevent the evidence from being presented at trial. So, after multiple attempts to get Lonna to do everything the right way, according to the Torah's principles, and her subsequent refusal to do so, I was instructed by my bezdin in 2008 to deposit a get, and thereafter I was given a heter to remarry. All of these facts are verifiable from the documents attached in the description box below. So in short, we have here a person who refused to go to a bezdin, had me gagged in order to restrict what I was allowed to say, then manipulated the family court proceedings in order to steal custody from me by imposing the gag order and eventually dismissing her entire divorce, a magnificent orchestration that is not seen too often. So, is this woman an aguna? I will let you be the judge. If you look at all of the evidence, I think what you will find here is a manipulative, argumentative, and conniving woman. Had she simply come to bezdin the way a Bas Yisrael should do, she would have received her get by now, because I was done with her. Do you think I would have wanted to continue living with her, a woman who does sinister things on her computer, exposing her daughters to weird behavior? A woman who alienates her children from their father? No. I was prepared to move along and do it the right way through a Besdin, but she had no intention whatsoever of doing an amicable Jewish divorce, and until this very day is refusing to pick up the Gett that I wrote for her voluntarily with all sorts of excuses. That's right, a Gett has been waiting for her since 2008, but since she has refused to follow the Besdin's directions on how to avoid receiving a Gett Meusa, the Gett is just sitting there. She has been trying for 17 years through harassing and defaming me and my family to force me into giving her a second invalid Gett. I will link below a letter for you to all see, which contains Rabbi Gestetner's simple instructions to her about how to proceed in order to receive her Gett. But instead, she found for herself fraudulent rabbis and other supporters who claim she's an aguna, and the rest is history. So after years of suffering insults hurled at me from her and all of her cronies, I decided to go public with my story, which eventually led to the creation of this YouTube channel. Since then, I've been bringing awareness to the general public about the thorny problem of rabbinic corruption at play in Jewish divorce. I reasoned that if in a case like mine, where I was in compliance with halacha while she held it in utter contempt, and yet she still found questionable rabbis who announced that I was a Gett refuser, then surely there had to be other men out there whose case would not be as clear-cut as mine, who would inevitably receive their fair share of scorn and derision from these malign actors. So therefore, if you see a man who's withholding an unkosher Gett, don't assume that he's doing so for selfish reasons. On the contrary, his wife is the only one who benefits from this action because he himself does not suffer the after effects of giving a coerced Gett. Even if he were to remarry, he wouldn't be considered committing adultery in any way. So therefore, Rabbi Gestetner and I have undertaken the arduous task of educating the public about the fabrications, lies, and distortions of the contemptuous rabbis who are causing our people to stumble in one of the worst sins imaginable in our Torah. Eating a piece of pork pales in comparison to the sin that a woman and her rabbi will have committed by accepting a counterfeit Gett. We cannot allow a system like this to continue. If Jewish divorce is lacking in fundamental integrity and no effort is made to differentiate between cases, but instead all men are simply lumped together as abusers and all women are deemed innocent little angels, then we are doomed as a society. So I want to assure my listeners that Rabbi Gestetner and I will continue to fight for the truth. We will continue to call out the lies of any suspicious rabbi or other fake aguna enabler who quotes false halacha or who makes up vicious lies about any individual. In the meantime, I would like to discourage any man out there from proceeding to any Besdin today until such time that the rabbinical court system is rectified and has been verified to strictly follow the halacha. Those that choose to ignore my advice do so at their own peril. Most Besdins today will have you in a vice grip once you sign their arbitration agreements. Then you will be forced by the civil courts to follow the Besdin rulings, even if they are grossly unfair and even if they are not in sync with Torah guidelines. You must beware of rabbis that initially smile at you and who sound very sympathetic. Sadly, it is all a ruse to get you to trust them. Once they have you on the hook, they will lure you in, and then you are doomed. I hope you will heed my advice so that you will avoid falling into the hands of these predatory rabbanim and dayanim. And so, I have now done my due diligence in warning you, as stated in the Torah, Lifnei iver lo titen michshol, and lo samod al dam re'echa. My years of experience has taught me the only way going forward for anyone to achieve a fair and halachically kosher divorce is through mediation between the parties while utilizing a truly unbiased mediator. I share my thoughts about the fake aguna crisis we are seeing today in my video number 20, titled My Solution to the Gett Crisis, where I offer a viable solution that could work, but nothing will change unless the hardened criminal rabbis and rabble-rousing women begin to change their ways, discarding feminism and woke culture and adopting instead a non-belligerent, fair and equitable solution in compliance with the Torah concept of Derochea Darchei Noam, which means the Torah's ways are pleasant. So stay tuned as I bring to you Rabbi Gestetner's refutation of the two corrupt rabbis, Yosef Feigelstock and Kahan. Thank you for watching, and see you all in the next video.